I'm Danny, and this is the Scream Princess podcast. Hello there, everybody. I'm Danny, and you are watching or listening to another episode of the Scream Princess podcast. And I am super excited about today's guest. We have got cult movie historian, film lecturer, interview host, and editor of We Belong Dead magazine, Darrell Buxton. And I've got, look, I've got some handy. How are you today, Darrell?
Yeah, I'm great, thanks. Yeah, good to go. Thanks for inviting me on the podcast. I was listening earlier on and watching earlier on the one that you did with my pals Ian and Andrew from the
Yes.
BHF Book of Horror. Yeah, lovely to be here.
Oh, well, thank you so much for agreeing to come on. How does it actually feel being on the other side of the interview? Because we met at the Festival of Fantastic Films, must be 3 years ago now in Manchester, and you interviewed
Yeah,
me on stage, and now the tables have turned.
Yeah, it's not often I get interviewed. I do hundreds and hundreds of interviews around the country at different events. I've met all kinds of amazing people on stage, and yeah, it is sort of odd to think that people want to talk to me, about what I do because
But you do
I'm
so
so
much. You do so much in the world of cult film and horror film. And I mean, you really have gone from cult film fan to now being somebody who is really respected in your field in all of these different areas. So it's great to have you on. In fact, it's a little bit daunting for me because you've done this way more than I have. So you are the
yeah,
professional and I'm just winging it.
yeah, it's strange for me as well, Danny. So we'll sort of help each other along, I think.
Yes.
But
Well,
yeah, to sort of give an example of I'm often so busy. I mean I'm supposed to be retired now because I had a day job that I left about 10 years ago, and the idea was to sort of put my feet up and watch DVDs or
but that's when you
Blu-rays.
get old, when you
Oh
stop
yeah,
doing
yeah.
stuff.
Well, I'm what am I now? Coming up to 63. So yeah, I don't know what counts as old these days, but maybe I've got a few working years left.
Well,
But
I've just read they're putting the retirement age up to 70, so you better get yourself back out to work.
wow, yeah. But I'm scraping by at the moment doing what I do. It's not well paid, but
Mm.
it's what my missus calls she calls it good work. As opposed to the sort of drudge that you
Yeah.
people do 9 to 5. So the problem with that is you swap a 9 to 5 existence for what ends up being like a 5:30 in the morning to midnight
Yeah.
existence.
And especially with you, if
It's
you've got interviews to do and you've got to talk to people who are on all kinds of different time zones as well. So, you'll
yeah.
be working through the night. But I think it's different doing what you love, like doing a day job where it's just a money job, where, you're just doing it to pay the bills and, no one wants to go to their money job. But then doing something that you love, you don't mind putting in the time, although it doesn't pay as well. So you're kind of like, it's like a
Definitely.
weird balance, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. And a lot of the people we associate with, at when me and you sort of go to festivals and bump into each other, a lot of the guys and ladies there are people that are in filmmaking,
Hmm.
as you are. And I sort of sit on the outside of that looking in a little bit. I've dabbled a little bit in filmmaking, but nothing to the extent of a lot of our friends and yourself, and uh, it. I'm sure it's the same for everyone who's involved in the British sort of low budget film scene
Hmm.
that you're doing what you want to do, but it's you've then got the logistical questions of,
Yeah.
oh, I've got to be in Stoke-on-Trent on Tuesday morning or whatever, or we've got to find a location for this big scene that we're going to do and we can't
Yeah.
find one, or where do we get £3,000 to pay for our props? So it's
Yeah.
everyone's got the same problems, but as you say, they're nice problems. It's doing
Yeah.
something we love doing.
That's it. I mean, and a lot of people do have a day job. What was your day job, out of curiosity?
I was a civil servant.
Right.
I used to work, although I say that I was also a union member, and I seem to spend more time on strike than I can remember more about the picket line and standing outside the office than I can about actually being at my desk. But But yeah, I was a civil servant working in the benefit system, and I managed to sort of maneuver myself. I always volunteered for the jobs that nobody else wanted, so that by doing that, I knew that if you worked in the department in a sort of standard benefit paying job,
Hmm.
um, the sort of two or three bosses above you in the chain of command all knew that job because they'd all come through it and done it, and so they could, with some authority, they could sort of lord it over the staff and tell them what to do, and tell them if they thought they were going wrong or whatever. So I always tried to maneuver it. So I volunteered for the jobs that nobody else wanted, and the little ones where I could sit in a corner on my own doing them,
Hmm.
and nobody had a clue what I was doing. So it was amazing. I mean, my final job for the last sort of 10 or 15 years was uh, I was dealing with people's mortgage payments and
Right.
helping out paying that as part of their benefit. And that's a job that doesn't even exist anymore now because they've changed that whole system. And it almost died out at the time I left. So, it's almost as though, oh, Darrell's gone. Nobody knows how to do this anymore.
Yeah.
We'll have to get the government minister to scrap it. I'm sure it wasn't like that, but it really did sort of fall into place at that same time. So I didn't care because I was in the Canary Islands on the sunbed, by that time. So enjoying my first week off.
But it's funny, isn't it, how like life has a way of doing that. It's like when things come to an end, it's like at the right time, like you were retiring anyway, and then that comes to an
Yeah,
end. And then it kind of
yeah,
frees you up to kind of do the things that you want to do. I mean, I'm lucky, like, because I came from a modeling background and obviously went into acting, I can still fall on modeling and bits and pieces. So I've never had to have like a muggle job. I've always been able to be flexible. And also, as an actress, you need to be flexible. But the reason I kind of am doing this is because I moved to the Northeast 2 years ago. I'm kind of a long way away from like the filmmaking network. And although, I can still travel, I can still do stuff, I've got a lot more time on my hands. Like I don't have to earn the amount of money that I had to earn to live
sure.
living in London. So I don't have to work as much up here. So it gives me all this free time. But I was like, I'm getting a bit idle. Like last week, I managed to cock up twice with things. There was one, it was a podcast and it was in the diary and I knew it was in the diary and I just didn't show. And and I'm never like that. Like I'm not flaky. I've always turned up. And I think it's the fact that I really now have nothing to do. I don't even bother looking in my diary anymore. And there was another thing I was meant to go to an event and I thought in my head it was a Sunday and I thought it was 12 till 2. And then I was literally about to leave my house at 10. And then I looked in my diary and it was 10 till 12. So I would have missed it. So I was like, I need to kind of busy myself so that I have to look in my diary again so that I stop being flaky because it's literally, when you're busy, I seem to always be on schedule. Like I always know exactly what I'm doing. But yeah, recently, so it was a big apology actually. It was the Misty Moon people that I am flaked on. So I have groveled and we're going to reschedule.
Yeah, yeah. My sort of I don't have a formal diary of such, but I tend to sort of have pieces of paper all over my desk with great long lists of what I've got to do on them, and I cross them out as they go, and then I find I'm sort of adding things because every time I look at my emails, a new job has come in, or there's something I've got to do. So I'm adding it onto this bit of paper, and then after about a week, you can barely read it. So I scrap it all and rewrite it and start again. It'd be much simpler to keep a diary, but for some
Yeah.
reason, you get used to what you like, don't you? And
Yeah.
I like these little scraps of paper.
I
And I
use
do,
my
it
phone.
works. It works.
Well, I don't use an electronic diary. I know a lot of people use a phone diary now. I don't. I do have like a physical paper diary. Like it's
Yeah,
like I
yeah,
like reading books. I don't like reading iPads. Like I like a
sure.
diary in front of me. I don't want to read it on a screen. But I do use my phone for my lists. And then I'll have
Yeah,
like 10 lists that are very similar. And as some things get crossed off, other things get added. And then I'm like, well, I've got about 5 lists here, and they're all kind of the same. But yeah, I mean that again, that's for creative types. You'll always keep adding to your
yeah,
to-do list. It's like, oh, I've got this idea, or I've got this to write, or I'll create things that I need to do. So yes, my
yeah.
goal is to start getting back to my normal productivity.
Yeah, it's nice to hear that you're an old-fashioned girl in those respects, Danny, and I think you can do that. You can we can use new tech as it comes along, but
Mhm.
you make the best of that to your own design. Don't let the tech take you over. And
Yeah.
then anything that works, if a pen and paper works, keep using it. That's
Yeah.
that's that's how I feel, and it sounds like you're the same.
Yeah, I mean, I have hundreds of notepads and I've tried to organize myself. So I've got a notepad for this film script that I want to be writing, a notepad for my murder mystery business, a notepad for this. So I try to keep them all separate. But I do I write notes. I use my laptop to actually do my writing because obviously you use technology and stuff. But I like things written down on paper. And it's like I reading a book, it's like, and especially a second-hand book, it's like, well, who else has read this book? This book's got history. It smells like old book. Like, how
Oh
many
yeah.
people have thumbed these pages? It's just nicer than kind of scrolling through this screen and giving yourself a headache on an iPad. It's not for me.
Sure, sure. And I mean, as you mentioned, you've got your notepads for each film project and so on. I've got to take the opportunity to ask how are things going in your film world? Because I saw the film where you made your directorial debut, which was
Yes,
what was it, the Zodiac thing that you
it
did
was,
an
yeah, it was the
episode of?
first
Yes.
horoscope. So you've turned this around and now you're asking me things. Um,
That's what I do,
yeah, that's what you
Yeah,
do.
yeah. I've
No,
got
it
to I've
was
got to get out of the habit.
it was horoscopes. It was
So I mean, I
it was
sorry, go on,
Gemini.
go on.
It was Gemini and it's
Yeah,
the horoscopes
that's
one. And
right.
I don't know if you've seen the other two because I did horoscopes two and three. I did Dragon for horoscopes two. And I don't know if you managed to see that. I know they screened it at Horror on Sea and at Romford.
Yeah,
I don't know if you saw
yeah.
it. And
I
then
didn't because my thing at Horror on Sea is now Paul runs it over 2 weekends. I can
yeah.
normally only manage to get to one of them,
Mm,
and I either pick the first or the second. So every
it
year there are some
yeah.
some films that I miss. So I've only seen the first horoscopes, but
Yeah.
I did your episode. I'm not just saying this because we're sort of here face to face, but I think I told you at Southend
Mm.
after it had screened. I thought it was the best of the 12, and for
Thank
someone
you.
who was taking their first steps behind the camera, having done so much in front of the camera,
Mm.
I thought it was amazing. I thought it was the best of the 12
Thank
episodes,
you.
and it's great to know that you're sort of doing more. It's always good to see you in front of the
Yeah.
camera, but great to see you making films as well. So
Yeah, well, I'll send you. I've got my other two. They're like secret links on YouTube that not everybody can get to, but
yeah,
I will send you my other two. So for the second one, I did Dragon because it was Chinese horoscopes, and I had Judy Matheson as my lead. And I actually
great,
wasn't going to be in that one at all, but then I was like, I'd also like to get the chance to be on screen with Judy, so I did put myself in it for a little bit. And then we did the dark horoscopes, and I got given it was the title was Hunger, and I did a more kind of comedic piece. So I'll send them to you so you can watch,
brilliant.
peruse at your own,
Um,
you know.
I'd love to see those. Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
And
God.
talking of Judy, I think you met Judy for the first time when I interviewed her and then interviewed you, sort of back to
Yeah.
back at Manchester, and you both hit it off. It was like you'd known each other forever. It
Well, we'd
really
had
was.
the journey. So I think I'd very briefly met her at an MCM Comic Con that we were both
Yeah,
at. Um, I don't know if it was possibly Birmingham. I think it was Birmingham. So I met her there, but only very, very briefly. And then I think because there was a train strike, we couldn't get to Manchester via the train. So we had a driver, and obviously both of us were in London at the time, so we shared the driver. So we had that kind of journey to Manchester to get to know each other. And yeah, it was literally like we've known each other forever.
yeah, that's great. And as I say, as an old union man, I'm glad to hear that someone striking actually worked out for you. So
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
yeah,
It
yeah.
worked out in a mysterious way.
Yeah, that's great to know. Anyway, I seem to be sort of taking over asking the questions, so I'll sit
Okay.
back and let
I've
you
got a
do the
big
job.
list of
So
questions here for you too.
fire away.
We will begin. So, what was it that actually drew you to cult cinema? Was it a specific film or a specific moment? What was it that kind of gave you that love?
Yeah, I don't know that I wasn't sort of hit by it because I can remember as a kid, my earliest memories as a kid were watching Doctor Who on an old black and white TV when I was about 5 or 6,
Mm.
and it's great because I've got quite vivid memories of watching quite a few of the Doctor Who episodes that are now missing. So
Yeah.
which I would have seen when I was like 6 or 7, and so they're all in my head somewhere. And if someone's got the technology to sort of draw them out, we could get those episodes back. But I had like Batman and Thunderbirds toys and things. I can remember playing with them in the backyard at home, and I can even remember losing. Uh, it was either a Robin figure from a Batmobile, or it was something from a UFO toy that I had. Like a missile that fired on something like that. I lost down the drain. I probably lost a lot of stuff down the drain in the backyard. But so yeah, it was just what I was watching on TV, and I think people. I grew up sort of in the late 60s and through the 70s, and people that are a bit younger than me have all these great memories of watching amazing TV in the 70s as well, and I think our generations did sort of, we almost had this cult thing sort of came into us by osmosis. And it
Mm.
was normal. It was just you turned the TV on and there was something mad on, like Ace of Wands or the Tomorrow People or Doctor Who or Batman. And we just thought, oh, this is telly. You didn't
Yeah.
think anything
So you didn't
special
know
of
it was
it.
cult TV then.
No,
Like it's
no,
become
no.
cult now over the years. So I suppose
Yeah,
when you were watching it for the first time, you had
yeah,
no idea how big it was going to be because if it obviously it's a major big thing now, all of this. Whereas a lot of the TV shows now, in a few years' time they'll be forgotten about. Whereas like things,
sure.
there are certain things that are going to stick around forever.
And the different thing was then, of course, because we only had sort of 3 or 4 channels, everybody watched the same
Mm.
stuff. You didn't have the fragmentation that you get now.
Yeah.
And as for horror, I can tell you the specific title I saw. The very first horror film that I remember seeing on TV was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, and
Right.
that's perfect for a kid to watch
Uh-huh.
because it's really scary, but it's got the great comedy in it as well. And I think
Mm.
it's Abbott and Costello's best film, and it's a great Universal horror movie as well. So I kicked off with Bela Lugosi as Dracula in my first movie, and then I mean, I was going to the cinema. Mum and Dad would take us to the cinema, and occasionally I'd go on my own with my brothers and see what were then sort of it was the old certificates then, A and AA and X and all of that, not none of your 18s and 12s and stuff. And so I saw stuff like Jaws when it first came out, and I would have been age 13, I think then.
Mm.
And because that was an A certificate, my brothers, who were sort of 3 or 4 years younger than me, could get in as well, and we sort of got our parents to take us, and so we were there on sort of opening weekend of Jaws in the local cinema, and then stuff like there were sort of kids films coming out like things like Land That Time Forgot and At the Earth's Core and all those great Amicus monster films, and we go and see those at the cinema, Warlords of Atlantis and the Ray Harryhausen stuff, and then as I got older, from the age of 16, I left school at 16. I looked about 11 or 12, and but this was at a time when cinemas were dying on their arse, so they would let anybody in. And so I sort of went up, basically looking like a school kid. Um, and I was actually sort of 2 years or 18 months too young to get into X films, but they sort of let you in anyway. There didn't seem to be. It was like, oh, we've got a customer, amazing, and you'd go in, you'd often be the only person in there, or there'd be about 3 or 4 other people in. And I can remember seeing stuff like Death Race 2000 and some of the early slasher films and stuff. Um, and yeah, so there was no sort of light bulb moment. It just gradually occurred from those early days watching Batman and Doctor Who on a black and white TV,
Yeah.
and it just sort of moved with the years, and I'm still doing it.
Yeah. So how did you then transition from being a film fan to then going into being a historian, an author, a lecturer?
Yeah. I I remember getting a typewriter, like an old-fashioned clunky, clanking of keys, inky ribbon typewriter. When I was 16, I think, for my 16th birthday, and I already fancied myself a bit as, oh, I know a bit about horror films and I know a bit about fantasy and science fiction. And I was buying all the magazines that were coming out at the time, like House of Hammer and Starburst and stuff like that. And I remember about the age of 17, I actually tried to write a book on the history of horror films. And I'm sure I've probably still got it somewhere because I keep everything. I bet I've still got the manuscript, and it's probably awful and full of mistakes and stuff. But yeah, this was about 1979, 1980. I was about 16 or 17, and thought, yeah, I can write about horror films, and then a few years later, uh, as we've currently got the filmmaking scene that you're heavily involved in. The weird thing was the reaction to the video nasties thing in Britain was not that people went out and made films. They did in Germany. There's all the German filmmakers rose up and said, look, films are being banned in Germany. Let's make our own, which is where you got all those things like Violent Shit and the Jörg Buttgereit films coming from, Necromantique and all of that. We never did that in Britain. What we did instead was all the horror fans that were sort of anti the video nasty ban rose up and we created fanzines, and we were doing these cut and paste, literal cut and paste, actually sticking photographs onto bits of paper, and stapling them together and getting them done down the photocopy shop. And I actually created my own fanzine in 1986, and it ran for about 6 issues. It was called Imagination Explosion, and it was a sort of mixture of horror, fantasy, bits of everything. And I just review films in there. And I remember getting I sold about 100 copies of that per issue. And the fanzines all used to advertise in the back of each other. We all had like classified ads in. And so there was a real network going on where if you bought one fanzine, you found out in the ads about 20 others, and you sent off for those as well. And then you found out about more in those, And I sold about 100 per issue, which
How
which
much
I,
did you
ne- I
sell
never
them
dreamed
for?
of. They were for about £3 or something,
But then that's
um,
actually a lot of money
that that
compared
that
to
was
like a
actually
magazine
quite a
now.
bit then. It was a case of making back your production costs. No one was in it for a profit because we were in it to get the message out there. And so all I did was I tot up what it cost to get it printed up and what it cost in buying the materials and
Yeah.
stuff. And then it was a case of I'll make up 100 issues. I worked out that cost me 300 quid or thereabouts, or 280 or something. So I just divided one into the other and said, right, I'll sell them for £2.95,
Yeah.
and yeah, people did actually, to my amazement, people did actually send me like, this was in the old days of postal orders and things like that. So you'd open your mail every morning, there'd be 6 postal orders had come out, all asking for copies of the mag. And they were great days, and I did get one bit of lovely feedback from somebody once who actually wrote to me and said, "Oh, I've read your magazine; it's brilliant." And he said the reviews are like reading a real magazine. And I thought, oh, this is fantastic. That's just what I want to hear, because that was a real boost to me. Because I then thought from that, maybe I could get work in the business. And it took years and years to do, and I still don't feel as though I'm properly in the film business as such. I'm still a bit of an outsider, but I started getting work at my local art cinema, which was back then was the Metro Cinema in Derby, which is now closed, but it's been replaced by the new building, Quad, where I work at the moment, and do a bit of freelance work there. And so I started sort of befriending the staff there. And then eventually they started asking me to sort of host film nights and do film introductions and stuff. And it's just gone from there. It's just really spiraled from there. And there's been no plan at all. It's just,
Just
I've
yeah.
kept plugging and plugging away at it. And more and more people have come to ask me, "Oh, Darrell, can you do stuff, or can you come to this festival and interview somebody?" And suddenly, I feel like horror's Michael Parkinson, only not as well paid. So
Well, how did you end up as editor of We Belong Dead? Were you there right from the beginning, or has this been kind of
yeah, well, We Belong Dead was one of the mags that I discovered
right?
through the fanzine network, and Eric McNaughton devised it, and he basically did the first issue on his own, which a
Hmm.
lot of us were doing, and they were like a one person job really, and
I've got issue
I
three. No, I've got issue three, I think here.
oh that's amazing if you've
I've
got
got
one of the
issue
first,
three. Oh no, hang on. I've got 30, 32,
yeah,
and I oh 40. No, I haven't got issue
right,
three. I think
yeah, well
these were yours.
you've got some of the ones that I've edited there
Yeah.
because the very early issues, Eric did a run of issues in the 90s, which are much sought after now, and they go for a fortune online. You
Hmm.
can hardly find them anywhere. I'm lucky; I've got a whole set of them because I'm
Right.
in most of them. And but I bought issue one because I saw it advertised in another fanzine, and Eric lived in Nottingham at the time, which was not far away from me in Derby.
Hmm.
So we actually started corresponding a bit, and then he invited me to write something for the mag, and he was starting to spread it out and get other people to do a bit of work for it. So I started writing, and again, back in those days, it wasn't the sort of glossy mag it is now. It was like just a sort of pamphlet with a cardboard cover and stapled together, very inky, and with photos cut out of other magazines and things like that. But they were amazing, just the sort of mag that I like. And I mean, I come from a punk background as well, and the punk thing had its own fanzine thing
Yeah.
going on. So it was great to feel like there was a horror equivalent of that
Mhm.
going on at the same time. And so yeah, I started writing for We Belong Dead early on, and stayed friendly with Eric, and we see each other quite a bit. And when he's not off on his travels all over the place, and then he revived the mag after many years of abandoning it and not doing anything with it. He revived it a few years ago, and I got straight on board saying, "Oh, I'll write for you again." And it was a much more glossy concern, like it is now. And and Eric did that for a while, and then he just found that his day job, which is being a tour guide all over the place, and he's traveling all over Europe, and he's meeting groups of foreign tourists and showing them all over parts of Britain. And he decided that he'd just not got time to carry on with the mag. And he wondered about actually finishing it altogether with at about issue 30 or 31.
Hmm.
And then he had the brainwave of asking me if I would edit it. And
Right.
I jumped at that because, again, that was something I'd been waiting to hear somebody say for years is, Darrell, will you edit a magazine for us? And it was like a dream come true at age, mid 50s or late 50s or whatever. So again, never worry about how old you are. You'll always get opportunities coming along. And here I was at like 58 or 59 or something, being offered this dream chance to edit my own magazine and sort of do what I wanted with it. And I've now edited, I think, getting on for 20 issues or so. I started with number 32. We're on number 47 now, and we've also done like a few specials and things
Hmm.
in between. So, and we've got our books sort of coming out regularly as well. So I've probably done I think this is the 16th actual issue that
Right.
I'm working on, which is the current one. And but then we've done like specials on Dario Argento and Roger Corman and things like that. And it's great. I'm loving it. And I love the fact that I can do themed issues. And like one we're planning for next year. You remember the old, like when you if you bought the Beano and the Dandy and all those old comics, they'd always do like a summer special in June or July. We're planning a We Belong Dead summer special, which is going to be reviews of all those movies about monsters invading the beach and things like that. So, sort of summer horror movies.
Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of my favorites.
Yeah, yeah, all that sort of thing. So any movie where a creature from the Black Lagoon type monster comes up onto the beach and starts chasing people, that's what's going to be in this special issue next year. So really looking forward to that. And I'm so glad that I can do that. That I can just have wake up in the middle of the night with a brainwave and think, oh yeah, we can put that in the magazine. It's brilliant.
So we've already kind of touched on this in our kind of intro, really, but how important is print media in keeping the legacy of cult film alive in a digital era?
Absolutely. I think people there's a certain generation that still trusts in print and still sees it as I think they believe what they see in print
Mm.
more than they might see online. I think there really is that sense with a sort of maybe an older generation, maybe my generation and slightly younger, but I think we sometimes transmit that through to younger people as well. And yeah, there is this sense that reading something in a magazine is somehow different to reading it online. And I
Mm.
don't just mean the sort of physical aspect of it, but I think there's something in there as well. There is something about trust. And I think the sense is that if someone's taken the trouble to write this and type it out and send it off to an editor, and the editor has then looked through that and sort of corrected it and fixed it and then printed it on paper that you can sort of leaf through, more effort has gone into that than goes into some keyboard warrior just tapping out a review on
Yeah.
IMDb. And so I think there is that element of, oh yeah, we actually believe these guys more than we believe what we're reading online. And so yeah, print is very, very important. And I think there are people that like the aesthetic of it as well, and they love being able to sort of pick up a mag. When they're sitting around at home not
Mhm.
doing anything, or if they're on a long journey, they can whip it out of the bag and have a look through. And yeah, and even professionally, you look at WH Smith's or somewhere, and all the hordes of magazines that are on
Mhm.
there, and if somebody new arrives in the pop scene, say like Harry Styles or Taylor Swift or someone, the floods of magazines that come out about them. So
Yeah.
there is still a market out there for print media, and I think it's very important to the horror community.
And as an editor, what do you look for in the stories and articles that you want to print?
Um, we've got this running gag at We Belong Dead about the Hammer film Dracula Has Risen from the Grave, because Eric once totted up uh, the films that had been covered in the mag, and without realizing, we'd had about 5 or 6 reviews of the same film, Dracula Has Risen from the Grave. Now, I don't mind that, and in answer to your question, I don't mind the same films being covered over and over again, providing this is the important thing, and this is the answer to what you've asked me, that the writer doesn't just say the same old stuff.
Mhm.
If you can take a film that has been covered time and time and time again and put a different spin on it, um, you're the sort of person that I want working for We Belong Dead. So they're the kind of writers that we aim for. We've got an amazing crew. We've got lots of women contributing to the mag, which is fantastic. Um, a lot of American writers. It's great to have sort of people from all over the world. I think there was a Canadian guy that was writing for us for a time, and we've got Europeans writing for us, and we make a big point at We Belong Dead as well of being very, very political. We actually get complaints about this. People, you look at the reviews online and people saying, "Oh, why are you doing a monster magazine, and why do you have to put politics into a monster mag?" And we're all about that. We're absolutely all about that. We did an issue on so-called black exploitation films
Mhm.
about a couple of years ago, and we made a big point of being so sensitive with that, and we got loads of praise about that from people saying, "Oh, you've tackled what this could have been a disaster. It could have been you using the wrong language and the wrong terms and laughing at these films. And what you've actually done, people realize what we've done was focused on like the Black Power movement and on how important it was that these films were made, and the sort of audience that went to watch them, and the fact that white people went to watch them. And even now, sort of 50 years on, they've got a big white audience that love them. And we see those films rather than looking at the sort of possible racist angle to them and that sort of thing. We see them as bringing people together, and that's what We Belong Dead is all about. We love the fact that horror movies can do that, and that they're still doing it. You know, it's great. The number of women directors that are working in horror now, the number of trans directors that are working in horror is incredible. And as you and me know from Horror on Sea, the sense of community is just palpable, isn't it?
Yes, well, we're out of time for part one, so I will see
Okay,
you back here
wow.
very shortly in part two.
Welcome back to the Scream Princess podcast.
Welcome back to part two of the Scream Princess podcast. So, Darrell, over the years, you have interviewed numerous guests at conventions and, for the magazine. Who have been the most memorable?
Um, I think that the top one has got to be Dario Argento. I couldn't believe it when I was assigned the chance to interview Dario at this was at Sheffield HorrorCon,
Mhm.
and it was initially I think it was 2018. Dario was due to come, and he cancelled a couple of days before, and I couldn't believe it. But luckily, his agent bought over Lamberto Barber instead, so I got to interview Lamberto, which was great. Then the following year, they invited Dario back, and I was assigned him again, and. Honestly, he spoke okay English, and he got an interpreter with him. But the thing with Dario is he was exactly what you thought he'd be, which is a high echelon artist. Talking to him was like I've said this to other people when I've mentioned interviewing Dario. It was like interviewing Beethoven or someone. It was at that sort of level. It was like interviewing Picasso. You know, you got a sense that okay, he was there talking about horror movies, but he was talking about them in such an elevated way that you could tell that when you watch his films, you do get the sense that there's a genuine artistic vision there. And I can tell you from meeting Dario face to face, that is absolutely the case. He is a committed. He's almost like a poet. You know, and usually I do an interview and you have a bit of banter on stage and you're having a few laughs and stuff. This was like something else. You know, it was like another level, and it was like, oh right, today I'm interviewing one of the world's great artists, you know, and he was fabulous, and he was great with the fans as well, and you know he had a laugh with the fans and everything. But when it came to the interview, he got something to say, and he made sure that he said it. But he was very gracious about his own influences as well. He talked about how because he'd written for Sergio Leone in the 60s, and he said he was on set of um, Once Upon a Time in the West, and he said all I did was I just sat and looked at Leone and looked at what he was doing, and I just soaked it all up. And he said I've tried to bring some of that to my own work. He was fabulous, and someone my favourite bit of that interview again, which I've related this story a time or two, is that. Someone in the audience, we always have like an audience Q&A section, and someone in the audience put their hand up, and they asked a question that to most people would be the most banal. If I asked it to you, it would be the most banal question you could imagine. But to Dario, it was perfect. And their question was, what's your favorite color? What a question to ask Dario. And he came back with the perfect Dario answer as well. He said, oh, I know really have a favorite color. I like yellow, I like blue, I like red, I like green, and just went through the spectrum, you know. And I thought, what a great question and what a great answer. And again, every time I watch a Dario film now, um, you know, it's I remember that part of the interview, whenever you see the amazing colours popping out on screen. One person I loved interviewing, who was a bit of a surprise. Occasionally, I get assigned people that have maybe only done one or two films that they're known for, you know. And I got to interview the guy who played Wishmaster, Andrew Divoff, and I thought, I'm going to struggle to get half an hour out of this. You know, I do like 2 half-hour interviews, one on the Saturday, one on the Sunday at Sheffield. And I thought, I'm going to really struggle to get 2 30-minute sessions out of this guy, you know. But my God, he was the friendliest guy backstage, chatting to everyone, asking people about themselves, you know, and the a thing I always love. Here's a tip for anyone out there who's in the business who might be interviewed one day. If you're ever interviewed by someone, refer to them by name on stage, because I love that. I love it when they say, "Oh, Darrell, you know this, that, and the other." Interviewers do like that. It creates a bit of a bond between us, and Andrew did that all the way through. It was Darrell this and Darrell that, you know, and considering that we were only really talking about Wishmaster and Wishmaster 2, we could still be there now talking about them, you know, the stories that he was coming out with. And again, the joy of his craft was very much the same as Dario. And he also started telling us about his sideline that he does at the moment, which is brewing his own beer and Wishmaster themed beer, you know, and
I love that. Like Dan Aykroyd did the Crystal Skull, didn't he? So like kind of like a
yeah,
bit ghosty. I feel like
yeah.
that's quite a big thing for people to do now. It's like brew their own alcohols.
No, it's great. It's great when someone who's a bit of a name has got a sideline. You know,
Yeah.
we all as fans we love that, don't we?
And they buy into
Uh,
it. Fans will buy into stuff. Like,
oh
like
yeah,
Elvira has so much stuff, and I will definitely, buy her merchandise, like because I need more stuff in my house.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I interviewed Dee Wallace a couple of times at Sheffield as well, and she was great. She told a fantastic story about working on Critters and the special effects in Critters, and she said, I'll have to stand up because we're sort of sat behind a desk, you know. She said, I'll have to stand up to answer your question about the special effects of Critters. And she stood up, walked to the front in front of the audience, and just like pretended she was like bowling a bowling ball, you know, and she said that was basically how we did the effects in Critters, was they were just like a ball shape, and we just sort of rolled them across the floor, you know. And I thought it was a story that was so good that I got to repeat it the following day. And this year, I was so fortunate to interview Jen and Sylvia Soska, who are fantastic.
Yeah.
They're like the American equivalent of you, I think. You know, they're just so sort of lively and great at conventions, and they're friends with everyone.
I
They love
love
meeting their
American
fans.
Mary.
Oh,
I
it's
think
brilliant,
I
brilliant.
saw it at Fright Fest. So that's the year I
Yeah.
think I had a full pass. It's the only year I've ever gone to like the whole thing. And I'm obsessed with that film. Anybody who asks me like, any good, what are your favorite modern horrors? And I'm like American Mary and The Autopsy of Jane Doe. They're my two favorite like modern horrors.
Good choices. Good choices. Yeah.
So
So
if you
yeah,
could interview, oh, go on, carry on.
the Oscars were amazing. They again they were just everything you wanted them to be and 10 times more.
So if you could interview anybody that you haven't already, whether they're dead or alive, you can bring them back. Who would it be?
Oh, that's a good question. For a dead person, I'd have to say Muhammad Ali. I think I tend to interview film people or musicians, and I'd love to interview a few sports people. And Muhammad Ali would be the one, not just because of his sport, but because of what a great,
Mhm.
amazing sort of champion he was in everything that he did in life. You know, um, yeah, good question. I do sort of at the back of my mind keep a list of people I'd love to interview. I suppose this will never happen now, but I'd love it if it did. I'd love to interview Jack Nicholson, and I'd love to interview him talking about his days with Roger Corman.
Right.
I'd love to interview him about the 1960s when
Mm.
he was trying to become a writer, not an actor, and he sort of fell into acting through things like Easy Rider when he was just casting stuff because he happened to be around, and found he got a talent for it. And which, when he's in those early Corman films, he's pretty wooden. You see him in The Raven or something, and you'd never guess that this is the guy who's going to go on to win Oscars and every award going, and become feted as the great American actor of his
Yeah.
generation. But I'd love to interview Jack about that like the first 10 years of his career. So yeah, maybe him.
And if you could curate the ultimate cult film festival, what films would you put in it?
Um, I'd probably take a bit of a tip from Horror on Sea actually, and you've got a friend joined you
What
there.
friend?
I love cats,
His
so
purring will
that's great.
probably overrule this whole thing. He's the loudest purrer you've ever heard.
Terrific. Looks very nice. Anyway, my curated festival. Yeah, I might take a bit of a tip from Horror on Sea and look at the independent scene and maybe show you a lot of the films that I've enjoyed that Paul
Mm.
Cockgrove has programmed. There's an American filmmaker called Chris Wood who's had his films shown at Horror on Sea quite regularly, and I love his stuff. I refer to Chris as he's like the 21st century version of a filmmaker like Larry Cohen.
Yeah.
Larry Cohen, I love filmmakers that have got something to say in their movies and that can get a little bit political. If they do a slasher movie or an alien invasion movie or something, they have a message within it. And Larry Cohen did that all through the 70s and 80s. And I think that so I called him Chris Wood earlier. Chris Moore, his name, Chris Moore, and yeah, Chris Moore's films I think are superb. The first film of his that was on at Horror on Sea was called Blessed Are the Children. I don't know if you remember seeing that there,
I don't
and it
watch
was
many of the films there because I can't
right.
concentrate. There's so much going on at the festival that I'm all a bit overwhelmed usually, or
Sure,
I'm in the
sure.
bar. So I
And
like
all
to watch
well,
things when I'm kind of quiet in the house. Like I
yeah.
like to concentrate when I'm watching a film.
And as we know, with the Horror on Sea bar, it's not just a place for people to get pissed. It's where business gets done.
Yeah,
It's where next year's films are
it's
formulated.
true.
Everyone's chatting to each other, and out of that comes next year's program.
Mhm.
And but yeah, Chris Moore's films I absolutely love. And Blessed Are the Children was his first movie that was shown at Horror on Sea, and it's like it's a sort of it's a movie in favour of abortion, and it's all about these women that are going to abortion clinics, and they're being faced by like masked protesters. One of whom turns out to be a slasher killer who breaks into this house where these three women live together, and it's sensational. The mixture of the message and the horror are brilliant, and
I
what
love a
I'm
good
most
slasher. Slasher's
oh
my
it's got
favorite
yeah,
subgenre.
this is a really good one, and my favorite scene in it was Chris actually dared to copy the elevator scene in Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill, where Angie Dickinson gets killed in the lift.
Right.
Chris actually remade that shot for shot in his film,
You
and
not get sued for
it,
that.
well, I think he improved on it.
Oh,
I think he put a couple of his own extra shots into
right.
it, and I was stunned. I thought, well, as it started, I thought, oh, I can see where this is going. His love of De Palma is being worn on his sleeve here, And I was almost sort of rolling my eyes, going, oh, this was such a good film, and now he's sort of ruined it by doing this homage. And then he put these couple of extra little horrific close-up shots in,
Oh,
and I thought, I can see what he's doing here.
right.
He's actually dared to take one of his own favourite scenes and think, can I improve on this? And I thought he's done it. Congratulations. And I've been looking out for his work ever since. And he's made about 5 or 6 films since, and
I'll look
they've
out for
all
him because he
really
sounds
impressed me.
good. He sounds like
Yeah,
interesting.
he's great, and he's got this regular female cast who work with him quite a lot,
Mm.
and why they've all not gone on to become massive stars, I don't know. Why they're still working with him on his tiny budgeted films, I don't know, because there are three or four of them that could break out into American television seriously, and he's so lucky to have that cast working with him. I think we find that in Britain as well. You yourself and the filmmakers at Horror on Sea um, we've got this amazing pool of actors that we're lucky that none of them seem to want to branch out and do anything more than
I know
go and
I'd
make
like to, I just
films
don't
with
have an
their
agent.
mates. Yeah, but I'm sure you could do it, Danny. But yeah, I mean, I guess you're happy doing what you're doing at the level that you're doing it.
I mean, I love
You
doing
seem to be.
horror.
Yeah, yeah,
I I love horror. I've always loved horror. So I love being able to make kind of movies, that I like. And it's so much fun doing horror. The thing with working in the independent industry is everyone's so nice. Like you've been to Horror and See and you know that everyone knows everyone. Every filmmaker is out supporting each other as well.
oh
So
yeah,
you
yeah,
have one filmmaker who will go and help out on another film and, vice versa. Everyone's so nice. So despite the fact that, making horror films and people think we must be very scary, everybody's really nice. And I like that. I like going to work and working with people that are nice and fun and it's an enjoyable place to be. Like I'd love to do, bigger stuff, higher budgets.
yeah.
I don't have an agent. And like also I don't push myself out there because I kind of like I've definitely found my niche and I feel like I kind of like it. But I'd like to do like I actually quite like doing a little bit of comedy, but if it could
Yeah.
kind of tie in with the horror, like I like, doing things that are slightly comedic and I like doing drama and stuff. So, I definitely would do other stuff. I mean, I've got things that I've written that I'd like to do. But again, it's budgets. Where'd you get budgets from? Magic
I
tree
know,
that
I
drop
know.
money on you to
Yeah,
make these
yeah.
movies.
Exactly. But I mean, horror's so flexible that you can sort of insert comedy or whatever you
Mm,
want into it. It's such a sort of malleable sort of genre. And yeah, I think my sort of dream all-nighter that you're asking about would basically be curated from. I think I'd sort of do like a best of Horror on Sea and
yeah.
take it on tour. And I think there'd be like a Chris Moore triple bill in there, and there'd probably be a Danny Thompson all-nighter as well. So
I mean, I don't think I'm going to be in anything next year because
right.
I've only shot one film this year and I don't know if he'll submit it because it's already due for release, which will be
Okay.
released before Horror on Sea. It's like due for release this year. So I don't know if that'll get submitted and I've done nothing else. So it could be a very quiet year for me at Horror on Sea
Wow,
this year.
that's a first.
Yeah.
No, Danny, but
I know.
yeah,
I'll have to work on something. I keep saying that up here, like because I'm in the Northeast and there are filmmakers and there are people doing things. And I need to just kind of, do some stuff up here, do some of my own stuff as well.
yeah. But
Yeah.
isn't it interesting though how there are these little pockets of activity, and we know from Southend where they are. Like, I've got a bunch of mates out in the West Midlands in Kidderminster. Um, um, Tom
Mm.
Rutter, who
Yeah.
I'm working with at Treasured Films, and his pals like Baz Hancher and people like
Yeah.
that. And there's this little knot of people in Kidderminster that are making films. There are people out in Essex that are doing it,
Mhm.
like our friends like Pat Higgins and people like that.
Yeah.
And so, although it's going on all over the UK, as you say, it's interesting. There are these little clumps of
Yeah.
serious
There
activity,
are. There are. So what modern film do you think is destined to become a cult classic in like, I don't know, 20, 30 years?
Yeah. By modern, are we talking like last couple of years or last
Well,
five
last
years or
10 years, because I
yeah.
still think like the 90s is modern to me, but
Yeah, okay, okay. That's a very easy one for me. A film that absolutely blew me away 4 years ago. Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho.
hmm
I've never seen anything like it,
Yeah, I
and
love
I've
it.
I've not stopped talking about it since I saw it. 4 years on, I'm still talking about it.
And I love Cafe de Paris. I remember, obviously Cafe de Paris is gone now. Sadly, it didn't make
Yeah.
it through lockdown, but I remember having a Barbie birthday party there one year. It was Barbie and
Wow.
Aquaman. It must have been like, I don't know, my 25th birthday or something, long, long time ago. Um, but I love like, that it was the staple in London for so long, like 100 years maybe, I don't know, like but
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
long time, it had the showgirls and it had all this kind of stuff, and then it became a club, and I loved that kind of history. And I
yeah.
think for
The
me, like
when
I love the beauty of the film and how it was made
Yeah,
and the
yeah.
color and the shots were all incredible. I also there's like a little piece of my heart because it was made at set at the Café de Paris as
Yeah,
well.
and of course, just yesterday, as we're recording, we lost one of the stars, Terence Stamp, who
Mm.
I think it ended up being his last movie, and what a way to go! He's
Yeah, I mean
fabulous
it's
in
an
it.
incredible film.
Yeah, I love what Edgar did with that movie and bringing back people like him and the various other sort of old time stars
Mm.
that he managed to get in the movie, who were all fabulous,
Mhm.
and then bringing the younger cast in as well. I think Matt Smith is brilliant in it, and
Yes.
the whole cast are amazing. The two
Yeah.
female leads are brilliant, and I just thought it managed to mix the slasher movie with the ghost movie
Mm.
with a tale of old London. And I love that line about how every room in every house in London is the site of someone's death. I thought that was so evocative
Yeah.
and such a great way to look at a city and look at the macabre history of a place,
I mean, it's
And then
true. Because like when I lived in London, I lived in, I don't know if you know the Bow Quarter, but it was the Bryant and May matchstick factory years ago, and
yeah,
it's been converted. So and it was a horrific place to work, 'cause where the first women's strike took place because of the Fosse Jaw, and they wanted a separate area to have their lunches.
yeah,
And I think I know like Barbara Windsor had links with it with her ancestors. Tony Robinson, he's been there. I mean, I was walking my
wow,
dog once in the grounds and bumped into Tony Robinson because he was presenting something on the building. But people had a horrific time there. And then obviously it
yeah.
got changed into this really yuppie complex with a swimming pool and a gym and like gardens and a koi pond. And it's like how things changed, but the history is there.
Yeah, yeah, and it's lovely. And I think Last Night in Soho is a film that really picks up on the different generations and different eras of London
Mm,
history, and it sort of mashes them all together in that same sense that you're
yeah,
talking about, where you can take one building, or you can take one area of London, or you can take a particular park or a square or whatever,
yeah.
and there is that sense of levels and layers of history and people being mistreated on spots,
Hmm.
which then develop into places of entertainment or whatever, and then maybe fall into disrepute again, and it just goes on and on and on through the decades and the centuries. And I think Edgar's film absolutely captured
Mm, yeah, it's an amazing movie. Oh, cat's back.
that.
So how do you feel about the current boom in franchises being remade for modern audiences?
um, as as with anything, if the films are good, I'm happy. If they're not, I'm not, and
Mm.
it's as simple as that. That's all I'm going to say on that.
Well, I'm a big
I
fan
like
of
I like
like
I like a good film.
yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan. Like my favorite era is like the 90s slasher movies. That's when I was like a teenager and I was kind of getting into, watching the genre. And I think you always tend to love those films that you kind of your sort of teenage years, what you watch then. And obviously when they brought Scream back, I was really worried, but I've loved it. And now obviously I Know
Yeah,
What You Did Last Summer. I like that they haven't remade it. They've kind of rebooted it. So obviously the I Know What You Did Last Summer, they have original cast members in it. The story's similar. It's along the lines of somebody did something last summer and someone's trying to get revenge, but like they haven't just remade it and redone the same characters. So I kind of did like it, but
yeah. I
sometimes
I got
I feel like they
I
should be
got
left
something out
alone.
of that. Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. And I'll throw in the name too. I did say I wasn't going to say anymore, but I'll throw in the name David Gordon Green here because I absolutely hated his Exorcist movie. But I'm one of the people who loved his three Halloween films.
right.
And the reason I loved them is precisely the reason that I sort of expressed earlier when I was talking about other things. They're political and they've got something to
Mm,
say. I
right.
think that the second of his Halloween trilogy was the best film that I've seen about Donald Trump's America
Yeah.
anywhere, and I think he absolutely nailed what's going on in America in a slasher movie. And the third movie I think is really clever, and I think a lot of people have maybe not understood it entirely. Um, because there's a lot of talk about who's this kid who appears in the film, who's come out of nowhere. Why is he the main character? Why don't we see more of Michael? I don't think Michael Myers is in that film. I think he's in the kid's head.
Right.
I don't think it's quite so much of a Halloween remake. It's more of a remake of something like John Carpenter's Christie.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you see that relationship between the teenager and the Michael Myers, who I think is a figment, I think that film works a lot better than if you're approaching it as a straight Halloween movie
I
with
love that
Michael hidden
interpretation.
away in the sewers. Yeah, yeah. And I always like putting spins on movies and looking for my own sort of way of interpreting them. And if my interpretation makes the film a better film, I feel good about defending it. And I think with a film like that got slagged off by the horror community, I thought, no, if you just twist it a little and look at it a different way and say, is Michael really there? Which is why, as well, when he gets mangled up at the end, he can still come back from that because he's not really been killed.
Yeah.
He's been killed in
That's
the
my
boy's
issue
mind.
with him as a character. So I like the slasher movies where the character doesn't have like superhuman abilities, like where
Yeah, yeah,
they are real and therefore that actually could happen in real life. Whereas Michael Myers, because he's this kind of superhuman and like, super strength and everything,
yeah. Well,
I've never been that into it.
He's even had his head cut off. He's been
Yeah.
mangled up in this machine, and he
Yeah.
keeps coming back. How? And they never sort of explain it.
No, with
It's
your
just, oh,
interpretation,
he's
actually,
back.
then
Yeah,
I could
yeah,
get on board, I think, more
yeah,
than
yeah,
more than previously.
yeah. I do. I push very strongly for that. I think David Gordon Green there made a film that he knew was going to upset fans, and he didn't explain himself. I think Michael is, if you rewatch that final Halloween film and watch it, imagining that Michael isn't there and that he's just in the boy's head, it works 50 times better.
Okay, well, if you could remake any cult horror film for a modern audience with any cast members, what would it be? Who would you cast?
Oh, that is a good question. I love my British horror films and I love my political films, as I've said. And there's a film from around the late 60s, early 70s called The Corpse or Crucible of Horror, which I'm a massive, massive favourite of. It's the best film that Michael Gough ever made. I'm a big fan of Michael Gough, who gets a lot of criticism for certain films. Like a lot of people don't like him in the first Hammer Dracula movie. I love him in that film. But in The Corpse or Crucible of Horror, he plays this sort of upper middle class businessman who tortures his family and sort of rules the household and won't let his wife and daughter do whatever they want, and he insists on them wearing certain things and behaving in a certain way, and he's very abusive to them. And they decide to get together and kill him. And they murder him, dump his body in a crate, and throw it over a ravine into a pool of water. And he's clearly dead. He's dead. There's no question of that. And he just comes back the following morning without any explanation. And again, it's a question of interpretation. And this movie came out at the same time as things like Play for Today were very big on British TV. And we were getting filmmakers like Lindsay Anderson, who was starting to bring surrealism into British movies and this sense of magic realism. And I think The Corpse is that type of film. I think it's saying, okay, they've killed this abusive guy who's like the master of the household. But in life, you can't kill people like that. And therefore the symbolism of the movie is that we'll because it's a horror movie, we can bring him back and we don't have to explain why. And that makes sense within the story because it's a symbol. Again, it's like Michael Myers being in a character's head. He's not really come back, but he's symbolically come back as a sign that you can never get rid of this breed of person. And I would love to see that film remade. And I might be tempted to cast, if I had to cast from the current pool of actors, I don't think that we've got that sort of breed of actor like Michael Gough anymore. So I don't think you could quite have that character the same. I'd be tempted, believe it or not, to cast Danny Dyer in that part.
Oh, really?
I think he could play a great sort of abusive husband, and
Yeah.
maybe have the character not so much as like a city stockbroker as Michael Gough plays him in a suit and tie, but maybe a bit more of a sort of yuppie wheeler dealer on the stock market floor sort of thing. And I think Danny could sort of fit that.
Mm,
That he'd be a sort of wide boy type character, he'd still be involved in stockbroking and city finance, but
yeah.
he'd be a bit more sort of post Wall Street, a bit
Mhm.
as Paul Whitehouse says, a little bit way, a little bit worse sort of thing. And but I think Danny Dyer could bring a lot to that sort of part and play it in a different way, and you could tell the same sort of story with him sort of abusing his family. And
Yeah.
I think he always comes across as a very kind and sort of loving person when it comes to things like friends and family. And I
Mm.
think he'd see that as an acting challenge, and I think he'd be up for that. So yeah, The Corpse remade with Danny Dyer in
I
the
would
lead.
like to see him do something different because he's always
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
playing the same, which again, with the typecasting, you get it because you get work. If people keep wanting to
yeah,
give you
yeah.
the same roles, you take it, but it'd be nice to see him to do something different. So to finish up, I've got a quick fire round, so we should have time for
Ooh,
some of these questions. So, Hammer or Amicus?
Hammer, I think. Just yeah, I love both, but Hammer
Favorite ever movie?
is James Whale's Frankenstein with Boris Karloff, 1931.
VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, or streaming?
I think Blu-ray. I love
You
VHS,
have to
love
say that now because of
DVD.
treasured films.
Yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But I think Blu-ray because there's room. I'm a big extras fan, and
Mhm.
I'm now involved in helping to make extras as well, which is great. I'm loving that, and so I like the quality of Blu-ray. I like the sort of the sort of long lastingness of it. As also we're promised, we get promised that all the time. But I love the space on the Blu-ray that allows for commentaries and bonus features and things. So yeah, Blu-ray, I think.
Okay, best horror movie poster of all time.
Oh, that's a good one. I think I like the London poster for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre that actually gives away the end of the film, and you don't know it gives away the end of the film. It's got the shot of Leatherface with the sun shining behind him
Mhm.
in silhouette, and yeah, I love that. I've actually got a really battered old iPad cover with that on that my missus keeps threatening to throw away because she hates it.
Is that
Oh,
where
it's
he's
filthy.
holding the chainsaw?
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Because
And
I've actually got the 10 by 8, which was signed by Gunnar
oh wow,
for
Gunnar
me
Hansen.
at
Yeah,
because we were both
wow.
at the very first Sheffield HorrorCon. We both guested there,
Yeah, yeah.
and he
Which
was
is the only
lovely.
one I missed.
Is
Yeah,
there
yeah,
anyone you missed? Well, he was
yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
lovely. And like he
yeah,
actually came around. So the first day we'd all kind of had drinks and stuff in the bar. And then after the show, he kind of came around. He's like, I saw you a picture. And obviously he wouldn't have wanted one of most of us because he wouldn't have a clue who we were. And it was obviously he was just being kind. And I was like, thank
yeah.
you. And I don't know where I've put it. And I was trying to frame it the other day. And I've got a few that I was going to put in here as my background. And I don't know where it is. It's somewhere safe. I put it somewhere safe. So I need to dig it out. Dig it out. Okay, so film where you preferred the sequel to the original.
That's easy as well. I absolutely love, and it's a much hated film by many, many horror fans. I love A Return to Salem's Lot, Larry Cohen again.
Okay. I haven't seen the original or
Yeah,
the sequel. So mine
yeah,
is Crocodile Dundee 2. Not horror,
yeah,
but I
yeah,
prefer 2 to the original. I love
yeah.
both, but I prefer
Yeah, yeah. I've just been editing this morning a piece on for a new We Belong Dead book that we're bringing out, and it's a review by Ben Unsworth, who's our youngest writer. I think he's only 20 or 21, but he knows everything. He's amazing, and he's reviewed Dalek's Invasion of Earth 2150 AD, the second Doctor Who movie of the 60s.
Wow.
And he says in his review, this is proof that sequels are sometimes better than the original.
Yeah.
And I think that can be true.
It's rare, but
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
sometimes it happens. And final question, well, final quick fire, favorite horror subgenre?
Oh, well, as I've said, I like political horror movies. So if that's a subgenre, it's quite a wide one because you can apply politics to a lot of areas of horror. But yeah, any filmmaker that can bring a bit of subtext and actually talk about what's going on in the world, I'm counting that as a subgenre,
You
and
can
I'm
have it.
saying that.
You can have it. And finally, what have you got coming up next? What do you want to plug?
I've got an absolutely packed week. I'm doing another podcast on Friday with an old friend of mine, Saxon Logan, who is the director of an 80s British horror film called Sleepwalker, which I helped to rediscover and re-promote. So we're doing a podcast together at the end of the week with my friend Andrew Graves, his T for Terror. I'm off to Treasured Films on Wednesday. I'm filming a bonus extra for a new Blu-ray, and I've been working on the booklets for some upcoming titles. I wish I could tell you what they were, but I'm sworn to secrecy on a lot of their stuff. They have announced that they're bringing out Werewolf Woman and the spaghetti Western or Italian
Tom
Western,
loves the spaghetti
a
western.
man, yeah. They're doing A Man Called Blade, which is one of the later ones from the 70s, directed by the great Sergio Martino. So yeah, I'm at Treasured Films on Wednesday. I'm actually starting to film after I finish talking to you today. I'm going to be filming someone and interviewing them in a similar way to what we're doing here for another bonus feature that's coming up on a Blu-ray. We're doing the We Belong Dead Guide to Giallo for a Treasured Films Blu-ray, and I'm starting the interviews on that tonight. We Belong Dead, we've got three things in the pipeline at the moment. We've got new issue on David Cronenberg, which is going to be out in October. That's going to be reviews of all of Cronenberg's films. That's to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the release of Shivers. And we've got two new books on the way as well. We're working on this one at the moment, which is called Mods and Shockers, and we're going to be releasing that and launching it at the Festival of Fantastic Films in Manchester this year. I'm about halfway through editing it, and it's absolutely fantastic so far. I'm loving what our writers have done. So it's going to be every British horror movie of the 1960s. And we're then following that up with another book, which is going to be a book about werewolf films, and we're hoping to get that out before Christmas. So that's what's on the way from We Belong Dead. So
I know
yeah,
somebody
very,
would
very
definitely want
busy.
that for Christmas because
Fantastic,
my partner's
fantastic,
dad is a big werewolf film fan. He doesn't like horror
excellent.
unless it's got werewolves in it, and
Just
he
just
loves it.
werewolves.
Just what,
That's
yeah, he
brilliant.
doesn't like any other horror, but he loves werewolves. He'll watch anything with a werewolf. So
Fantastic.
I've been
Well,
told.
yeah, so our werewolf book is on the way. So yeah, that should be out in time for Christmas. So there's your Christmas present sorted.
There you go. Well, thank you so much for coming on. You've been amazing. And I think people
Thanks,
are really going
Danny.
to love this episode.